Welcome everyone to Hunt the Habitat. A great dog and a shotgun will only get you so far in the uplands. In this podcast, Ann Jandernaw helps us to attain a more in-depth understanding of the birds we love to hunt, their habits, their habitat, and how those change through the year and through the hunting season. Hunt the habitat, find the birds.
Hi, this is Ann and Steve. Quick note before the podcast starts. It's hard to believe it's Christmas time already. However, we have a podcast geared toward all that could probably go wrong for a Christmas meal with relatives coming over and things of that nature. So it was a little bit different for sure, and this is a shorter podcast. We also deal with thinking about the possibility of bringing a new pup into your lives, determining how old is old, and can your dog hunt another year? But with all that being said, let's jump right into the podcast. And even I'll say it at the end of the podcast, I hope you guys have a great Christmas. Thank you.
We are about to have the holidays, and we are about to have houses full of people.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about this last year, okay?
Oh, yeah.
You did a little section on this. And look, we're all 90% of us out there are dog owners. We've been through this, but it can be a little stressful for our dogs with a house full of people. Some dogs handle it better than others, no?
Yeah, I mean, there's dogs like my dogs. They can't get close enough to you, so they're over exuberant. And it's basically, I've got to almost protect people from being loved to death by my guys and the gals. Yeah, so they're just extremely friendly and loving dogs. And if there was a child in here, you've got to put some of the ones that are just, I can't love you enough, to you're going to stay in the crate because you're going to terrify the child because it's in your face and the dog thinks, well, everyone loves me, but he doesn't realize he's got to really temper it for that child. So you need to be thinking about what the dog is going to do, how it's going to greet little ones, and so forth. Are these children used to dogs? Oh, and there's always the one that ends up wanting to feed the dogs. You better think twice. Does that dog just grab the whole hand and try to take off with the food? Or is it very delicate and careful around a child and doesn't give it a memory that it'll never forget for the rest of its life? You need to think about those things. How is your dog going to react? You don't want the dog to come to grandma in the wheelchair and tip her over. Okay, so you basically need one that's gentle, that's calm. Match the dog and its attributes and the way it responds to people to the people. Now, if your uncle is a crazy nut, put him out in the yard with the dog with a frisbee and let him have at it. But you probably need to, even before everyone shows up for meals, practice on the dogs not trying to counter-serve. I'll tell you a story. Friends of mine I cannot remember what the name, I used to remember the name of the dog. I could see the dog. It was just a shaggy mutt. And they loved the dog. And everyone was in the living room, and this is Thanksgiving. Well, they all came out to the table because the food was getting ready, and the wife had gone in the room to call everyone out. It comes back, oh, it's Mischief. That's the name of the dog, was Mischief. Mischief was on the table eating the turkey dinner. But then Mischief got yelled at, and Mischief was very sensitive, and Mischief peed on the table then.
Oh, no.
So it was a Thanksgiving that no one in that family ever forgot.
Frozen pizza.
It'd be a dinner to die for. I mean, there was pulled out all the stops and everything. Well, trying to get the dog off the table, they scared the heck out of the dog. If they had gone in and been calm and just totally grabbed Mischief calmly, the dog probably wouldn't have had an accident on the table. There probably wouldn't have been turkey on the floor and gravy and potatoes all over it and the peas rolling down the table. I mean, it was chaos.
What a great story.
But this is an honest to God true story. Mischief got banned.
You think?
And I'll tell you what, that family learned at that point, one, that Mischief was put up before anyone got around the table. But when everyone left that room, and she had everything set up for the whole family to come in, that was Mischief's cue. Aha, I'm going to get into stuff. So think about what your dog is capable of doing, or the worst case scenario, this is what this dog could do, because I think it's got the tendency to do this. Sometimes it's best to avoid chaos, even if you enjoy it, and put the dog up.
Don't have any mischief.
Yeah, this is not a Hallmark moment. The mother-in-law just keels over. Everyone's holding their head like, oh my God, I don't believe what happened. But think about it. The other thing that typically happens, if there's a child in the high chair eating, things don't stay on the high chair, on the table, a little plate in front of there. The peas are running off the edge. There's stuff happening. And there's one person I knew. So the child's there eating, and the dog kept coming up underneath between the child's legs.
Right up
so
behind the tray.
Yeah, so it got the nose got between the tray and the child before anyone noticed. It almost knocked over the high chair because someone yelled, and it scared the dog, and the high chair almost went over backwards. I talked to enough people that you hear the horror stories of things that go on.
Mm-hmm.
And if a dog is afraid of company, that's the other thing. Don't force it to go to everyone to be petted, because it's only going to get worse. That's just something that the dog has to do on its own terms. You can't force the situation. Better just take the dog, separate it, put it someplace else, and say, yes, I have a dog, but he's going to be more, or she's going to be really more comfortable if it's just, she likes it quiet. And just know your dog and know what it can handle, or what's going to tempt it too much. Or think of an envision in your head of the worst case scenario and try to avoid it. Because inevitably it'll happen.
One thing I have discovered, and I think most of us have discovered, is that, look, if you're sensitive about having your dog fed scraps and people food, and you've got a house full of people,
Mm-hmm.
just box the dog, because someone's going to look at them, and the dog's going to be cute and friendly and all that, and somebody's going to give them food.
Steve said no, but I want to do yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's that. It's paybacks. Yeah. And that's one way they do it. And the other thing is, okay, Indy rules the roost here. A little dog named Indy from England is prim and proper and rules the roost. And if you sit on the couch and are petting a dog, or if another person's sitting on the couch and there's a dog between them, she'll weasel up in there and then get snarky that you're petting the other dog and then try to roost the other dog out of there.
And I experienced that when I visited you.
Yes, but I warned you that this.
Yes, you did. Oh, you absolutely predicted it.
And I just took her and put her up because I just don't trust her. And so don't inadvertently think about this, pit two animals against each other for affection. If they're a little possessive of humans or toys or whatever, put them up. Because a young child or a young person, and many people don't understand dogs and the dynamics of what's going on, it could be catastrophic. It may not be the dog getting bit, it could be the person.
Mm-hmm.
So,
especially you get in between. Yep,
you get in between. And toys, oh my, sometimes it's best to put all the toys up so that there's not an incident and everything. So, and then, of course, you're pulling all the Christmas stuff, all the wrapping and everything. Try to think about what the dog might eat. Start putting stuff up. I had one dog that kept wanting to eat bows.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, it was a beagle, and the beagle wanted to eat bows. I don't know why bows. It must have been something in the glue, possibly. For those old-fashioned bowls where you pull them over and you stick them on. And that, it's just no different than you don't want to give cats tinsel. They shouldn't eat.
No, you can't. We have two, in addition to our two setters, we have two cats, and there is no tinsel on our tree.
Right.
Yeah, that's a huge no-no.
And if you think your dog's going to eat something possibly that it shouldn't, always have some hydrogen peroxide on around to make it throw up. So, and usually it'll take 2 times to get it to throw things up. You want to catch it pretty quick.
When you give that, is that straight? Are you mixing it with water? Are you cutting it all? Is it just straight?
Straight, and just try to make sure it's going down the throat and into the stomach and not down into the lungs.
Many of us carry that. Okay, it's in our skunk kit. And that's number one, if you carry a skunk kit in your truck. But here's another use for it.
Oh, I'll give you a third use for it.
Yeah.
Okay, you got a vehicle. Say there's cloth seats. Take the hydrogen peroxide and say the dog clips as a toenail, so now it's bleeding. There's blood all over the cloth seats. Hydrogen peroxide, you pour it on there, and it'll lift the blood up.
Break up the blood?
No, it lifts it.
Okay.
Lifts it up because it does that. Maybe other people have had problems with discoloration. I have never had problems, and I've poured it on things and carpets and all that. So even if there's an accident on the carpet, before you go and push it around and all that, trying to clean it up, pour the hydrogen peroxide, and it literally lifts it up off the carpet, and then you can sort of come in underneath it.
Okay.
And it works really nice. It's cheap.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And it's really good to have on hand. And it's easier if you get the bottles that have the small opening where you squirt it versus having it where you're pouring it out of, you take the lid off and it's it's not a squirt bottle, so to speak.
Sure.
It's just pouring it. So I like the squirt ones because I can direct it exactly where I want it.
Okay.
But you never can have enough of that stuff. And that's cheap.
I carry 2 bottles. I've got a little, and again, I'm absolutely positive I'm not the only one, but I have a small, actually it is a little tackle box that's got my first aid stuff in it for dogs, the dog first aid box, but it also has a couple bottles of hydrogen peroxide. It's got a little bit of Dawn dishwashing detergent. Oh, I'm trying to think of what else is in there. And some baking soda. And you use that in case of skunk.
Mm-hmm.
Works like a charm. And again, that's well known. So.
Yep. And there's a lot of variations on that recipe too.
Right. Absolutely. And one of the things you did want to talk about today was end of season evaluating your dog, particularly your older dog.
Some of the things that you look for is how much stamina they have and how quickly they recover. I'm talking about a person that actually conditions their dog and gets it ready before going to a hunt. There's those that are out there that just take the dog and go, and they don't even get it ready, which to me is not right. You're asking the dog to do 4 or 5 times the amount of work that you're going to do walking down a trail. And they'll give you everything they got, but then they're wiped out big time after that. And there's a lot of things that we as people, and I've learned as I've gotten older, that I think too, you get older yourself and you think about the aches and things that you're going through, and then you see the dog having trouble getting up, and it's a reminder that we all get old. Whether it's putting your dog on a glucosamine chondroitin supplement, there's ones that I like, but the older your dog is, the better it needs to be, that supplement. It's not like, oh, it's got it in the dog food, it's enough. No, it's not enough.
That's not enough, no.
Like, I think it's Cosequin and Dasequin or something like that. I use both of them. I also, for the first time this year, I tried the Librela injection for older dogs, and it really does help. And it was well worth it to see my dog's gaits and everything smooth out. And these are dogs that are going on 12, going on 13 years old now. So that was really a nice plus. I know some of the vets that are using it now for even their own dogs. But just taking care of that dog so it's comfortable as it gets older, that should be the focus. And then with moderation, you need to figure out how long can the dog truly hunt. You also need to be watching how much water is it drinking and how often is it peeing. You may need to take it and have it checked. Kidneys or other issues and things of that nature. And I'm talking about when you get that 10 and a half on up. Typically, it's not that it can't happen earlier, but you need to be monitoring if what the dog's tests were back at 10 and a half, the tests that you do like at 11 or 12, you can see you have a baseline to go off of, and then you can see where the dog is at and how much of a departure from the baseline that you have. But my point is that you need to realize that at some point, if you're wanting to hunt the dog for 4 or 5 hours and it's 9.5 years old, it's going to go downhill very quick. And this isn't the excuse to start using carprofen or Rimadyl with a dog to mask the pain. Because all you're doing is if you're not getting the dog conditioned, and if the dog is overweight, to me that's an overweight dog, a dog that's not conditioned, and you're expecting it to hunt as if it was 5, is actually cruel. Because that dog's going to feel that pain for many days after that. And you got to look, are the joints swelling right above the wrist on that knuckle? If they look like they're puffy, that means you've got joint problems. The other thing you should do, you can tell when a dog is starting to really lose its flexibility. When they're young, take their feet, bring them back onto their foreleg, the back part of their foreleg. And the dogs that are really good and really athletic and have good range of motion, that'll almost go flat. You can barely get your fingers through the hole when you bring that leg totally back. Just a second here. Who can I get them over?
This is basically folding the paw to the back of the. When you say leg, we're talking about folding the paw to underneath.
Let me see if I can get him to come over. Come on. Indy, come here. Little hellion. Come here. Let's go up here. Okay. So we have Miss Indy here. Can you see her?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you see how that folds back? That's nice.
Yeah.
And you can barely get it in there. Now, Kenzie's only comes... Now, just stay still. Kenzie will only come to here, but this is a nice... It's tight still. And she's only 8. And so being able to... I'm not the best at explaining it. I at least show you so you can explain it better, the visual. But as they get arthritis, they can't fold it back.
Okay.
And so that's one of the things that you check. And then check for I talked about reading the gait. Know the gait of the dog. Know, is it favoring one side or the other? All of these things. So having the dog well conditioned means that they can hunt for you. They may not be able to hunt what they used to, but at least they can hunt efficiently and without pain. So look at your dogs and let's say that you had it conditioned to the way it should be to go into the season. Did it wear out in 2-3 days? How far did you get into your week or 2 weeks of hunting? So they'll start to slow down the pace, and you need to take breaks for those dogs, but you got to look at the dog and say at some point, sometimes I have guys that are 12 or 13, their dog's 12 or 13 years old, and they're saying, well, I think it's finally slowing down. It's just that dogs have such big hearts, and they want to go, and they'll give you everything. It's you, the owner, that needs to monitor it, and also needs to basically say, this is enough.
We need to be realists.
Yes. And you need to prepare for that next dog to come in. And I'll tell you one thing, bringing in a young dog in, while that older dog is still at that 9 or 10 years of age, is a lot easier for that dog to handle. The rambunctiousness, the craziness of a young dog. versus it being 12 to 13 years old. It almost gets to be too much for some dogs. Sometimes it works, but if you want to get on a dog's nerves, that's when it'll start to happen with the older dog and a young pup, and the pup's being obnoxious to the old dog. And the old dog just wants to go hide underneath the couch and get away from the young one. You want to have it at the point where the old dog still wants to be around the young one. But if they get too old, they don't want to be around the young one because it's too much for the old dog to handle. Oh, it's just think about the dog and where it's at. Oh,
but what you're getting around to here is that after the season, it's a time to start making some evaluations about what you can expect the next year.
Mm-hmm.
And if you, maybe it's time to get on a puppy list. Maybe, well, I'll pick on myself for a moment. I've got a 9-year-old, just turned 9. Gets to where you've got to start planning ahead. You can start to see
the writing's on the wall.
Writing's on the wall, and she's starting to slow down, and it takes a year to get a puppy going, and so you've got to start thinking about those things. And again, once the season finally closes out, we're going to do a lot of what you're suggesting, and just doing some hard thinking, and probably making some sort of a move.
Well, and the other thing too is that if you wait too long, that dog is not going to be an example to the young dog because it doesn't want to be around it.
Mm-hmm.
The young dog is nothing more than a big obnoxious thing on 4 legs. And if you get it like at that 9, 10, 10 and a half, right in there, it tolerates the young dog. And then it becomes an example. And then the older dog is still able to teach for the young dog, and you can use the older dog with commands and things like that, and the young dog will start picking up the commands quicker versus just having to do it on its own.
Learns about house manners and yard manners.
Yeah. Well, just come and the routine, and it feeds off the patience of the other dog because it's a good example. But if you let it go too far, you let the older dog get too old, you're not going to have that asset.
Since we're on the topic, how do you bring in a puppy? All right, you've got this 8 to 9 week old pup into a house with, let's say, 2 other dogs.
First up, before that puppy even gets home, I'd have a smaller yard set up off to the side for it. You don't want it keeping up in the distance and the range of an older dog. You're not going to be expecting that. And setting the range is not the dog's responsibility. It's the owner's responsibility, and it's the owner's responsibility to maintain that range. And I don't know how many times I hear from people, I want a setter that works close. Well, folks, working close is up to you. It's up to you to be persistent with it and the structure of it. But with a pup, and this is what I tell everyone that gets a pup from me, I want you to fence in a small area. I want it so that it's a close distance. So if you have to grab the pup, you can grab the pup. And we're talking like an area that's 20 feet by 20 feet. And that's where the pup's going to be for quite a while. But what's really cool is the pup learns patience. That's its little play area when it goes outside. If the other dogs run out farther or whatever, it just learns patience to sit there and watch. If a bird flies away, it learns patience to watch the birds fly away. What do you think happens? That puppy sees a bird fly on point. I had 4 puppies this year, because the owners did it, that were setting themselves up early on flush. It learns that it doesn't chase. Now it makes it a little interesting gun breaking it or introducing the gun. But it checks itself because it learned that from day one when you had it back with you. So I'd start outside, I'd introduce them, no food involved. I would never feed them all together because the puppy's just going to go after everyone else's food because it always fed with a bunch of other pups. And you need to have a timeout place for the pup so that it can go into its own little house and its own little place where it's going to sleep. And I'd have that place sort of close to the door. So you're not asking it to go a long ways from the door to getting outside. I'd watch it when it tanks up on water, take it right outside to its own little spot, let it go out, go to the bathroom, learn it, and then you use that little fenced-in area so it learns to come to you on command. But it also learns to be patient and confident by itself. And it doesn't become needy because the other ones ran off to the other end of the yard. It accepts that it's going to be by itself. So these are all things that, and when you take it out and you're going to take it for a walk, you take it for a walk by itself. Don't pace it with the other dogs. And this isn't something that in 6 months, we go, if you want a close working dog, you don't let it compete with the other dogs till about after a year with distance. Because you need to teach it the foundation of what it is for the distance that you want. But you're not going to reel it all out at once. You're going to reel that out actually over a year and a half to get it to where you want. But that's going to be its world. But if you do a yo-yo back and forth, where does the pup know? So everything you do is to keep the world of that puppy small. You don't make a lot of changes from where you pick it up to the first month. Some people, they got to take the puppy to this friend. They got to take the puppy over to this house and so forth. I mean, it's like run the neighborhood with the puppy. You're overstimulating. No different if you overstimulated a child. What do you get? A brat. It's too much. It's sensory overload. So you slowly introduce things. But it's easy for everyone to want everything now. Well, it didn't happen in our lives. Everything comes with a season, as they say, or with a time. And it's the same thing with the pup. Little steps, little increases at a time, and you just gradually introduce it. You don't just give it the run of the living room. Wife won't be happy after a while. You put up things that you don't want chewed on. You give it things that it can chew on, so it associates that I chew on this and that, and not the pillow with the fringe on it, or the leather of the chair. And don't be holding it all the time, because it's going to expect that constantly, and it's going to become needy. One person, they called me and said the pup learned to housebreak itself in 6 hours. Well, it kept going to the door. It had never been home. It first got home, and it's going to the door and scratching. Ends up that the puppy figured out in 6 hours that if it went into the door and scratched, it got to go out. And so I asked, is it going to the bathroom every time it goes out? No, it's running around. I said, well, it just trained you to let it out so it can go run around. And that was within 6 hours. So they're smarter than we think. But you got to have a place for that pup, make its world small. Think about it. That pup's coming from a pen or a fenced-in area, a certain size area, to you. Look at what the pup is dealing with right now. What is that pup's life at the breeders, and what is its life going to be like with you? Mimic it so that the change isn't too much. And the children, there's a time to pet and hold the pup, and there's a time to put the pup up. The pup has timeouts, the children have timeout. Otherwise, it becomes, you're trying to keep a balance. And that's the best thing that I could say is look at where the pup is coming from, find out what the pup's life like is at the breeders. How much is it eating? When are they usually crashing? When do they usually sleep? When do they get up and roughhouse around? What's their time schedule? If you got a breeder that's around those pups, they'll be able to tell you exactly what that pup's life is from the moment it opens its eyes every morning to when it goes to bed. And breeders should be able to tell you that, because that's a breeder that's going to know it really cares about the pups. So that's what I think.
What about introducing the pup to the older dogs? Is there a process for that? What's your process? I'm sure there is a process. What's your process?
This is out. You go. trying to be nice to him, and it's like, this is a dog that takes advantage of being
Mhm.
petted. Once is never enough. And now I'm getting mopey. I don't know if you can see mopey here.
No, he's
you
a
see
little.
him?
But I've met him. Oh, there we go. Now he's just looking cute. He's looking at the
He's
gun,
looking
like,
at the gun.
Mom.
Okay, the gun is a
It's
squirt
a squirt gun
guys.
she's mentioned or numerous times in the past to kind of keep her pack in line from a distance. Works great.
Yeah, it works good too.
So, yeah.
But when I introduce them, basically it's one at a time. And I would sit down in the grass or something if you can, or wherever you're going to do it. If you can do it outside, it's good because
Mhm.
it's a neutral area. And I sit down with the puppy between my legs and let the other dogs come up because
Okay.
I'm the refuge for the pup. Versus, I've seen a lot of pups. Some pups are bold and they come up and they sniff the nose of the dog, and the older dogs are afraid. And then it sees the back tail swishing back and forth. The next, we had one pup that beat onto the back tail, latched onto the back tail. The adult dog went nuts. And it's like, and puppy actually got a little bit dragged, and it was just like,
That didn't go well.
I mean, well, and it's like, and the puppy thought this was great. This is what I do with older dogs now. So it's not only controlling the adult dog, it control the pup. I did not expect that out of that pup because that pup was so mild-mannered, and all of a sudden it turned to hellion in 1 second. And the older dog was like, oh my word. And so the next time the puppy lunged for it, that pup went airborne, sidestepped it. But yeah, make yourself the refuge, because then the pup is seeing you as the safety
Well,
net.
and the older dog sees you as the authority
And
figure too.
Yeah. If you say back or whatever you taught your dogs, I like my dogs to know back, because sometimes they crowd me at the door, and all I've got to do is sound rather authoritative with the word back, and it's like, oh, she means it. We better skedaddle. So, but it's the tone of your voice also, and sometimes just a hand movement, because when you work with dogs, it's not only your voice, but it's your eye contact, it's the hand movement, it's your posture, it's the angle of your body. I mean, it's like if you're working horses, all this comes into play, no different than with dogs. So it's just interesting, but really, that's how I do, and a little bit at a time. And if the puppy doesn't want to sniff with the other dog, and the other dog doesn't want to sniff the puppy, don't force the situation. It's like trying to force Aunt Jane to try to hold the puppy, and Aunt Jane doesn't want the puppy. Just let it be. For a while, there could be a standoff for a while. And then all of a sudden, after maybe a week or two, they start to learn to be with each other, and they tolerate each other, but try to make the experiences together a good thing. Because if you're coming in with a dog that's never been around pups, that's traumatic for that dog. It's been the only child, so to speak, and now you brought the little one in, the little hellion that wants to bite my tail, the one that's now stealing my bed, now the one that runs over to my bowl and wants to clean it out. And after a while, that older dog may get upset, and if you don't, you've got to keep the pup from doing nasty things to the old dog. That puppy needs to learn manners. So it's not, you might think it's funny, but it's not going to be funny when the older dog nips the pup. And then that becomes, with the puppy, they typically overreact. I mean, it'll be hypes, head for the hills, screaming, and they'll be terrified of that pup, now the older dog. And you're trying to keep things neutral. So use some common sense. It's not a time for comedy, that's for sure. Comedy is when everyone's getting along. And stealing bones. And you better have extra bones. That's another thing. If you're going to put bones out, and you got 2 dogs, have 4 or 5 bones. Because then they always have another one to go to, and there's nothing to fight over. But you watch for the hoarder. There's always one that hoards bones. Yeah. Pascal hoards.
So, yeah, I'll tell you, the tough day for me will be, and again, in the next year or two, we're going to bring in a puppy. And my older Llewellyn, we've been we've been all over together. We've been numerous states. We've just spent a lot of time together. But the day will come when I go on that week-long trip and she may not go. She may stay home with mom. And that's hard. That's hard. But there's a point at which you have to do that, isn't there?
Well, I've always managed to make room for them, even if it is for like 20, 25 minutes to walk down a trail.
Okay.
I take them. I still make them a part of that because I think that's part of.
No.
I wouldn't want to be left behind.
Yeah.
The same thing with huskies. Those huskies, I would do stuff with the older dogs. It may have not been hooking them up, but it's taking them for a walk down the trail, and they went along. I didn't leave for my kennel. I couldn't leave dogs behind because there was no one there to watch them. So the old dogs went, but I always found a place to get. They got out and they got their food. Went through the routine, and then I'd find some place to go over by. Sometimes it'd be a huge parking lot, and I'd turn them loose and let them run around. And I thought that was great because then they got to have fun, and they were going someplace. So I always have taken my dogs, but I try to make sure that if they have to wait in a vehicle or whatever, that they're comfortable. And the older they are, the more you have to think about their comfort. So.
All right. My wife and I are doing a little northern Wisconsin New Year's Eve trip. We're going to get up there probably on the 30th, probably stay till the 2nd. And if the snow totals are down, if there's just a trace or an inch or a couple inches, we're going to bring the pups up, and we may do a little bit of light hunting. Nothing crazy. We'll get out for a couple 3 hours in the morning or mid-afternoon actually, and just see what else we can scare up. I don't know that we're going to work real hard at it, but again, you don't want to let go of the season just yet. It may not be terribly productive, but we're going to give it a shot. Find out what happens.
Yeah. I like to Christmas morning or when I can. Hopefully the weather's halfway decent. I take the dogs for a walk in the woods, and we just go out the door, and it takes about 4 or 5 trips because there's multiple dogs. But we go for a walk, and they have fun, and hopefully no one finds a snowshoe.
They're there.
And it's off to the race. Oh yeah, they're there. They're here. They've been underneath the steps next door where you were staying. But I had a flying squirrel get in my quail pen.
Okay.
That was
Is there
different.
damage or?
No, it was. I walked in and it was dark, so I hung up one of those lights that I have. You have the magnet on the back, and I opened the door to put the water and stuff down for it, and I'm like, that's not a chipmunk. And it's obviously not a red squirrel. And then it turned around and they've got bigger eyes. And it was sort of like shocked by all the light, I think. And it was a flying squirrel in there. And so anyways, he went into the pen. I don't know how he got in. There was no tracks. He must have landed on top and came in from the top. And typically weasel will come from the bottom up. I haven't seen him anymore, but he was visiting, I guess, the quail. Checking things out. Maybe they're exchanging Christmas packages. I don't know.
Amazon Prime delivers once again to the quail pen.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, it's been a different, my thing right now is, I am concerned about enough food for these birds because we've gone through such a series of droughts, multiple years. Some good snow would be helpful if we're going to have 20 below. That's not a good thing. I've seen birds. I've got areas that I usually see them all the time. But it's been interesting watching the changes in the feeding schedules. The last feeding before the temperatures really dropped, they fed between 2:30 and 3:30. And then they were like gone. And I didn't see any birds feed till almost 1 o'clock the next afternoon. But there was no snow to burrow in, nothing. Nothing that was going to help. they had to get out of the weather. And so I've been, any place I stop or look around and that, I'm checking the size of the catkins and the buds and things like that. So, but some of the catkins on the hazelbrush is pretty small, and some of the ironwood doesn't have much catkins this year. They're small as well. They're moving through food sources,
but a little bit
in
more
different areas.
quickly than they might normally. Is that really what you're saying here?
Very quickly. But the ironwood catkins, at least in my area, were gone before November. No, they're just, and it was they weren't big. They were really small. I mean, they're not big to begin with, but usually there's 3 catkins together, or there's 2 and then a third. It can be multiples, but there wasn't that many multiples to grab when they're on a certain branch. So they had to move around more for it, which makes sense when you have a drought. So, and the same thing is, at least the hazelbrush in our area, they're having to move around a lot more to fill a crop, which means they're exposed longer and they're making more movement. We'll see.
Anything else you want to cover this evening?
No, I hope everyone has a good Christmas and everything. I'm going to be here in Wisconsin, and I'm also going to be up in the UP. I always enjoy the trip up to the Keweenaw and coming back, and I hope everyone has safe travels and enjoy it, and don't eat too much fruit cake and candy and stuffing and fudge and cooking. We'll be talking about the next exercise routine for the starting of the year.
Boot camp for grouse hunters.
Yeah, but I do hope everyone has a wonderful Christmas with other family.
And everybody remember to hunt the habitat, and Merry Christmas, everybody. Thanks, Ann.
Merry Christmas.